Vusi Mathibela's name carried a weight that was both feared and revered. In the township of Mamelodi, people spoke of him as if he were beyond reach, a man draped in the armour of influence and power. To some, he was a businessman, a community figure who commanded respect. To others, he was something darker, a taxi boss whose empire was built not only on money, but on menace, intimidation, and whispers of blood. His reputation earned him the street name Keke, and with it came an aura of untouchability. But the illusion shattered in July of 2024. After nearly a decade of legal battles, investigations and speculation, the Pretoria High Court broke through the myth. Vusi, together with 3 of his trusted allies, was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The charges were not minor, not political, not technical loopholes of white-collar crime. They were stark and unforgiving. The murder of Northwest tycoon
Wandile Bozwana
and the attempted murder of his companion,
Mpho Baloyi.
The judgment landed like thunder in South Africa's underworld. This was not a petty gang leader being caged. This was Vusi, the man many believed was too connected, too feared, too clever to ever face true justice. His downfall marked one of the rare moments when the shadows of the taxi industry collided violently with the full glare of the law. Taxi bosses had long thrived in a murky space between business and brutality. But here was one of their most infamous faces being dragged into accountability. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. For years, Vusi had cultivated an image of strength. His wealth was visible, his lifestyle lavish, his connections whispered about in hushed tones. Yet the court stripped that all away in one decisive ruling. 30 years meant the mask of the untouchable was gone. He was no longer a feared boss on the streets, but a convicted murderer behind bars. For Mamelodi, the verdict left the air heavy with shock and whispers. Could it truly be that the man once believed to be beyond the reach of justice was now confined to a prison cell? And for the families of Wandile and
Mpho Baloyi,
the sentence carried a different weight. It was a recognition of their loss, a sliver of justice in a saga written with gunfire and betrayal. Vusi's story had been one of power, but in the Pretoria High Court in July of 2024, that power finally cracked. The untouchable was touched, and the man who once ruled with intimidation and influence was reduced to a number in a prison system he thought he could avoid forever. The crime had unfolded on a sunny afternoon of the 2nd of October, 2015. A wealthy property owner and political critic stopped at a traffic light on the N1 Garsfontein off-ramp. A BMW M3 pulled up next to them. A man stepped out. Gunfire erupted. He was hit at least 9 times. His passenger was struck twice. He clung to life but died later at Unitas Hospital. His passenger survived but with injuries that carried the memory of bullets for life. Vusi and his co-accused were arrested. They pleaded not guilty, but in June of 2022, the state secured convictions. The evidence was unrelenting. CCTV cameras caught the men from Nelson Mandela Square in Sandton, their movements precise, their timing deliberate. The state argued this was no random attack. It was a calculated execution, orchestrated with a single, cold purpose. Police Commissioner General Fanny Masemola praised the investigation. For 9 years, detectives and the National Cold Case Unit worked tirelessly, piecing fragments of evidence into a watertight case. Justice, though delayed, had found its mark. He reminded the nation that the long arm of the law is neither merciful nor selective, and those who plot violence will be caught in its grip. But beneath the courtroom victory, darker currents still stirred. The roots of the crime stretched beyond 4 men with guns. In June of 2016, less than a year after the killing, police captured a suspect at Boyafuthi hostels in Katlehong. He was a man with prior convictions, a man who allegedly acted as the coordinator between hired killers and the shadowy masterminds. Cornered by the Hawks and Metro Police, he began to talk. Investigators learned chilling details. The hitmen had been paid 100,000 rand. Politicians and businessmen were implicated. The planning was meticulous.
Wandile
had no chance of escape. 10 witnesses were approached by investigators, each carrying pieces of the puzzle. What emerged was a picture of money, politics, and betrayal. Wandile Bozwana was not a man who lived quietly in the shadows. He was bold, outspoken, and unafraid to take on those who wielded political power. In the months leading up to his death, he became a thorn in the side of the Northwest provincial government, led at the time by Premier Supra Mahumapelo. His fortune was vast, with a sprawling property empire in Mahikeng. But it was not enough for him to keep silent when he felt corruption was eroding the very foundation of business in the province. Wandile spoke publicly and often, accusing Mahumapelo's administration of systematically sidelining him and other entrepreneurs, denying them access to lucrative state contracts. His voice carried weight, and his challenges to authority were not mere grumblings. He turned his grievances into legal battles, filing case after case against the provincial government. Each lawsuit added pressure, prepared to fight with every tool at his disposal. He was not simply a businessman protecting his interests. He cast himself as a crusader against what he described as political exclusion and corruption, daring to confront those in power on a stage most feared to tread. The conflict reached its boiling point only days before he was gunned down. He was locked in litigation that had escalated all the way to South Africa's highest court. He was pressing to seize 44 government-owned vehicles and even a state bank account that contained 30 million rand. His claim was staggering. He alleged the provincial administration owed him more than 40 million rand, money tied to construction work at Brits Hospital. If he succeeded, it would have been a public humiliation for Mahumapelo's government, exposing its financial vulnerabilities and its disputes with one of the province's wealthiest businessmen. Wandile walked into the Constitutional Court, carrying not only the weight of his case, but also the weight of years of animosity. He had openly accused the provincial leadership of corruption, of shutting doors to those not aligned with the political elite. His fight was no longer just about unpaid debts. It had become a symbol of defiance, one man daring to challenge the machinery of government itself. But defiance carries a price. Days after standing before the Constitutional Court, Wandile was ambushed in a hail of bullets. To his allies, it was a brutal silencing of a man who dared to speak too loudly. To investigators, the timing was too precise to be coincidence. Dared to wrestle with the state and expose its failings, and in the end, his courage to confront power may have placed him squarely in the crosshairs of those who wished him gone. The timing of his murder was no coincidence. He had crossed powerful figures. Some said he was silenced. Mahumapelo denied involvement. Still, investigators hinted that the financiers of the killing came from political and business circles in Northwest and Northern Cape. The Hawks did not rule out more arrests, leaving the case forever shadowed by suspicion of higher hands guiding the triggermen. Vusi's role in all of this made him a symbol of something larger than one crime. He was not just another violent taxi boss. He was the face of an industry that has long been marked by bloodshed. Taxi violence in South Africa is notorious. Routes are fought over like gold mines. Associations rise and collapse in gunfire. Court rulings and government interventions rarely end the cycle. In this world, men like Vusi thrive, carving empires from fear and cash. Yet just as easily, they fall, dragged into prison cells when their arrogance outruns their power. The conviction in 2024 was hailed as justice served. But questions remain. Who ordered the hit? Who financed it? Why did outspoken critic of corruption have to die? The official record closes with 4 men serving 30 years. The unofficial story lingers, suggesting more names hidden in smoke and influence. For South Africa, the story of Vusi is not just an isolated tale of betrayal and bullets. It is a mirror held up to a nation where crime has become interwoven with the fabric of daily life, where power and violence often walk hand in hand. In townships and cities, in the taxi ranks, and the corridors of provincial government, men rise not only by the strength of their business, but by the fear they inspire. Taxi bosses become kingmakers, deciding fates with a nod or a glance. Business rivalries do not end in arbitration, but in funerals. Every tender, every contract, every route can carry with it the shadow of death. South Africans live with this reality each day. Families hesitate at traffic lights, eyes scanning the cars that pull up alongside them. Politicians deliver speeches about service and integrity, while whispers of corruption ripple through the crowd. In the streets of Mamelodi, the highways of Gauteng, the halls of government in Mahikeng, Scars from stories like this one never truly fade. The gunfire that was not just aimed at a man, but at the fragile hope that truth and justice might stand unbroken in the face of power. Vusi, once wrapped in the myth of untouchability, now sits as just another inmate with a number instead of a title. His fall is proof that even the feared can be dragged into the light. Yet prison walls cannot erase the pain. Wandile is still gone, his voice silenced, his empire cut short. And the whispers around Vusi's name linger in Mamelodi's streets, in courtrooms, in every darkened corner where men still believe money and violence will shield them from consequence. This case is both lesson and warning. The law may take years, even decades, to strike, but when it does, it can shatter the myth of invincibility. Still, justice delivered in a courtroom cannot silence the deeper question South Africans are left with. How many more such stories are already unfolding? How many more tinted windows hide assassins waiting for the light to change? How many whispered deals are sealed not with ink, but with bullets? The saga is not simply the story of one crime. It is a haunting reminder of the dangerous dance between wealth, politics, and blood. It is a chapter in the book of a country where lives are too often measured in contracts won, debts unpaid, and grudges carried to the grave. And as the nation moves forward, it must reckon with the truth that until the cycle of violence is broken, the sound of gunfire at traffic lights will remain part of South Africa's tragic song.
Crime in South Africa is not just a headline, it is a daily reality. Power and money blur the lines of justice, and violence too often decides the outcome of disputes. The courtroom may deliver sentences, but do you believe justice truly brings closure? Or does it leave behind wounds that never heal? These stories echo through our streets and homes, reminding us that no one is completely untouchable. But how many more lives will be lost before the cycle of corruption and bloodshed is finally broken? We tell these stories not only to remember the victims, but to understand the forces shaping our country. So let me ask you this: what do you think it will take for South Africa to change? If you want to keep exploring the hidden truths behind the crimes that shape our nation, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share your thoughts in the comments below.